Have you ever looked at your keyboard and thought, why does it start with QWERTY? Like, who decided that was a good idea? If you were organizing letters, wouldn't ABC make way more sense? It's like organizing your kitchen by putting the forks in the basement and the knives in the attic. Makes no sense, right? But here's what nobody tells you about that random looking keyboard layout you use every single day. It wasn't designed to help you type faster. It was actually designed to slow you down on purpose. And the reason why reveals something fascinating about how we get stuck with systems that don't even make sense anymore. In the next 20 minutes, you're going to understand why the most inefficient design won the battle for your fingertips. And once you see how this happened, you'll start noticing this same pattern everywhere in your life. So why QWERTY? Why not ABC? Or literally any other arrangement that makes logical sense? Here's what's really happening. Every single day, you sit down at your computer or pull out your phone. Your fingers instinctively know where every letter lives. You don't think about it. Q is up there in the corner, A is on the left, M is down at the bottom right. You've typed thousands of emails, texts, and Google searches on this layout. You've probably been using QWERTY since you were a kid. It's burned into your muscle memory so deep that if I asked you right now to type on an ABC keyboard, you'd be slower than a kindergartner learning to read. But think about it this way. When you learned the alphabet, you learned A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's how every alphabet chart works. That's how every kid learns letters. So why don't keyboards follow that same logical order? Everyone tells you that's just how keyboards are. That's the standard. That's what we use. But that's not an answer. That's just accepting something without asking why. What really happens is we inherit systems from the past without questioning them. And QWERTY is one of the wildest examples of this. Because the reason QWERTY exists has nothing to do with computers, smartphones, or anything digital. It goes back to a piece of mechanical equipment from the 1800s that had a very specific problem. And this matters because it's not just about keyboards. It's about how inefficient systems become permanent just because they got there first. It's about why the best solution doesn't always win. It's about understanding that the world you live in was designed around problems that don't even exist anymore. Let me take you back to the 1,860 seconds. No smartphones, no computers, not even electric lights in most places. If you wanted to write something, you had two choices. Write it by hand with a pen, or pay someone whose job was literally person who writes stuff down to do it for you. Then this guy named Christopher Latham Sholes shows up. He's a newspaper editor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Sholes has an idea. What if you could have a machine that prints letters onto paper? Not a printing press for books. A machine that one person could use to write documents faster than handwriting. He starts tinkering, building prototypes, testing designs, and eventually he creates something that actually works. The typewriter. Now picture what this machine looks like. It's got these long metal arms called type bars. Each type bar has a letter stamped on the end. When you press a key on the keyboard, it makes that type bar swing up and strike the paper through an ink ribbon. The letter gets printed, the type bar swings back down. Simple, right? Except there's one massive problem that Sholes didn't see coming. When someone who knows what they're doing sits down at this machine and starts typing at normal speed, the type bars start jamming, like constantly jamming. You hit two keys close together in sequence, and both type bars swing up at the same time. They crash into each other midair, they get tangled, the whole machine locks up. You have to stop typing, reach into the mechanism, physically separate the jammed type bars with your hands. Then you can start typing again, until it jams again 30 seconds later. Imagine trying to write a letter on your laptop, but every few sentences your keyboard just freezes and you have to open it up and manually fix the mechanism inside. You'd throw it out the window, right? That's what early typewriter users dealt with. And here's where things get interesting. Sholes realizes the jamming happens most often when you type two letters that are next to each other in the alphabet. Because on his early designs, he had arranged the type bars in alphabetical order. A is next to B. B is next to C. Made perfect logical sense. But common English words and letter combinations meant certain type bars were swinging up right after each other constantly. The letters TH, the letters ER, the letters ING, all super common. And if those type bars were positioned close together mechanically, they'd crash into each other before they had time to fall back down. Sholes is staring at this problem. He's got a machine that works in theory but fails in practice. He can't make the type bars move faster because they're literal pieces of metal governed by physics and gravity. He can't make them smaller because then the letters would be too small to read. So he comes up with a solution that sounds completely backwards. Instead of making the machine faster, he's going to make the typist slower. He starts rearranging the keyboard. He takes the most commonly used letter combinations in English and deliberately spreads them out. He puts them on opposite sides of the keyboard. He makes sure frequently paired letters are far apart mechanically so their type bars won't be near each other. The letter E and R show up together constantly in English. So Sholes puts E on the left side and R on the right side. Your left hand hits E, your right hand hits R. The type bars are physically far apart inside the machine. They don't crash. T and H are super common together. Sholes splits them up, different sides of the keyboard. He's literally designing the layout to make fast typing harder, because harder typing means fewer jams. And that's how you get QWERTY. It's not random. It's not based on letter frequency. It's based on keeping metal arms from crashing into each other inside a mechanical device from 1873. Here's what I call the efficiency paradox. The system that works best isn't always the system that survives. Sometimes the system that survives is just the system that solved yesterday's problem and happened to be there first when everyone started learning it. QWERTY wasn't designed to be the best keyboard layout for human typing. It was designed to be the best keyboard layout for primitive mechanical typewriters. Those are completely different goals. Think of it like this. Imagine if your car's steering wheel was positioned based on where horses used to be when people drove carriages. And we all just kept that steering wheel position even after horses disappeared completely. That's basically what happened with keyboards. But here's the thing. Once QWERTY was out there, something else happened that locked it in forever. In 1873, Sholes sells his typewriter design to a company called Remington. Yeah, the same Remington that made guns. They saw the typewriter as a new product line. They started mass producing these machines with the QWERTY layout. Remington had manufacturing power, they had distribution, they had salespeople going to businesses across America saying, "Buy our typewriter, it's the future of office work." And businesses bought them. Law firms, newspapers, government offices. Suddenly there are thousands of QWERTY typewriters in offices everywhere. This matters because once those typewriters are in offices, something predictable happens. People learn to type on them. And once you learn to type on QWERTY, you're locked in. There's this pattern I've noticed. Your brain builds what I call muscle memory monopolies. Once you train your fingers to do something one specific way, relearning a different way feels impossibly hard, even if the new way is objectively better. You've experienced this if you've ever switched from iPhone to Android or Android to iPhone. The new phone might have better features, might be faster, might be cheaper. But for the first week, you're constantly hitting the wrong buttons because your fingers remember the old layout. That's what happened with QWERTY. By the 1890s, there were typing schools teaching QWERTY. There were professional typists whose entire career was built on QWERTY speed. There were millions of typewriters in use with QWERTY. And here's where it gets wild. By the 1920s and 1930s, typewriters had advanced enough that the jamming problem was basically solved. New designs had the type bars positioned differently. Better springs, better mechanics. You could type fast on pretty much any layout without jamming. So now QWERTY's original reason for existing is gone. The problem it solved doesn't exist anymore. You'd think this is when someone would say, "Hey, let's redesign keyboards to actually be efficient for humans now." And someone did try. In the 1930s, a professor named August Dvorak studied typing efficiency. He looked at finger movement. He analyzed English letter frequency. He designed a keyboard layout that was scientifically optimized for the human hand. The Dvorak layout puts the most common letters right under your strongest fingers, vowels all on the left home row, most common consonants on the right home row. Your fingers barely have to move to type common words. It's genuinely more efficient. Studies showed people could learn to type faster on Dvorak. They had less finger fatigue. It made logical sense, but nobody switched. And I mean basically nobody. Here's what nobody wants to admit about systems and standards. It doesn't matter if something new is better. What matters is whether the switching cost is worth it. The switching cost trap is when the pain of learning something new outweighs the benefit of the improvement. Even if the improvement is real, even if it's significant, think about it from a business perspective in 1940. You're running an office. You've got 20 typists. They all type 60 words per minute on QWERTY. They've been doing it for years. Someone tells you about Dvorak, says it's more efficient, says your typist could eventually type 70 words per minute. But here's what that actually means for you. You have to buy all new typewriters. That costs money. You have to retrain all 20 typists. That takes months. During those months, their typing speed drops to basically zero as they relearn. Your office productivity crashes. And after all that pain and expense and lost productivity, maybe they get 15% faster, maybe? Or you could just keep using QWERTY, which works fine, which everyone already knows, which costs you nothing. This isn't because people are lazy or stupid. This is because the math genuinely doesn't work. The benefit is real but small. The switching cost is massive and immediate, and that's exactly what happened. Businesses didn't switch. Schools didn't switch, and because nobody switched, new people kept learning QWERTY, because that's what all the keyboards were. Then, computers show up in the 1,970 seconds and 80 seconds. And here's the thing. Computers don't have type bars. There's no mechanical jamming problem at all. You could design computer keyboards with any layout you want. But by this point, there are millions of people who learn typing on QWERTY. There's an entire generation of office workers whose muscle memory is QWERTY. So computer manufacturers put QWERTY on their keyboards because that's what customers expected. That's what made their product easy to use immediately. Apple could have put Dvorak on the first Macintosh in 1984. Microsoft could have made Windows default to a different layout, but they didn't because the market had already decided. This reveals something deeper about how standards work. Here's what's actually happening behind the scenes. Standards don't win because they're the best. Standards win because they're the most entrenched. The technical standard paradox is when the widespread adoption of something okay prevents the adoption of something better. And it's not just keyboards. Look at the QWERTY pattern everywhere. We still use AC electrical current instead of DC, even though DC is better for modern devices. Why? Because AC won the infrastructure battle in the 1,890 seconds, and we built the whole grid around it. We still measure stuff in feet and inches in America, even though metric is objectively simpler. Why? Because it's what we learned first, and switching would be expensive and confusing. We still use the QWERTY layout on our smartphones, even though touchscreens have nothing to do with mechanical typewriters. Why? Because your fingers already know where the letters are. These patterns aren't personal failures. They're predictable outcomes of how systems lock in once they reach critical mass. The moment enough people learn something one way, that way becomes the standard. Not because it's optimal, because it's familiar. And familiar beats optimal almost every time when switching costs are high. Let me tell you about two people. Let's call them Rachel and Marcus. Both start learning to type in 2015. Rachel learns QWERTY like everyone else. Takes a typing class in school, practices on QWERTY, gets faster over time. By the time she's in high school, she's typing 65 words per minute. Not amazing, but solid. Good enough for school papers and college essays. She goes to college, gets a job, spends 8 hours a day typing emails and documents on her laptop, all QWERTY. Her fingers know exactly where everything is. She doesn't think about it. Then one day she reads an article about Dvorak, learns it's more efficient, thinks, hey, maybe I should try that. My hands do get tired after long typing sessions. She downloads a Dvorak layout for her laptop, switches it over, sits down to write an email, and she can't type. Like, at all. She's staring at the keys, trying to remember where letters are. What used to take her 3 minutes now takes 20. She's frustrated. She's making typos constantly. She tries for a few days, maybe a week, but she's got actual work to do. papers to write, job applications to send. She can't afford to type like a third grader while she relearns, so she switches back to QWERTY. And she never tries Dvorak again. Here's what Rachel doesn't realize. She's not failing at Dvorak because she lacks discipline or intelligence. She's trapped by timing. She already invested years into QWERTY. Her brain has built those pathways. And the temporary pain of switching doesn't feel worth the theoretical future benefit. Now compare that to Marcus. Marcus also learns about keyboard layouts. But Marcus hears about Dvorak before he learns to type. He's 12 years old. He's about to take his first typing class. His dad, who's kind of a tech nerd, tells him about Dvorak, says it's more efficient. Marcus figures, why not learn the better system from the start? He's got no QWERTY muscle memory to unlearn, no switching cost, just pure learning. He practices Dvorak, gets faster over time. By high school, he's also typing 65 words per minute, same speed as Rachel. But his fingers move less, his hands feel more comfortable. When he goes to college, every computer lab has QWERTY keyboards. But Marcus can switch the software layout to Dvorak in about 10 seconds. Same with his laptop, same with his phone. He never faces the switching costs that Rachel faced because he never invested in the old system. Notice how the difference isn't about intelligence or skill, it's about timing. It's about which system you encounter first. Rachel and Marcus both end up typing at similar speeds. Rachel has QWERTY, Marcus has Dvorak, both work fine. But Rachel can't switch even if she wants to, and Marcus can use Dvorak because he never had to switch. Here's what most people don't realize about standards and systems. It's not actually about which system is best. It's about which system you learn first and how much it would cost to change. The real question isn't what's the optimal keyboard layout. The real question is the optimal keyboard layout so much better that it's worth relearning everything? And for most people, the answer is no. Not because they're lazy, because the math doesn't work. A 15% improvement in typing speed sounds great until you realize it means weeks or months of typing slower while you relearn. It means lower productivity right when you need to be productive. It means frustration and mistakes and constant mental effort. That's not a character flaw. That's a rational calculation. This is why QWERTY won. Not because it was designed for humans, because it was designed for typewriters, then it got there first, then everyone learned it, then the switching cost became too high. It's the same reason why social media platforms are so hard to leave, even when they get worse. Your friends are there. Your photos are there. Your connections are there. Sure, the new platform might be better, but everyone you know is on the old one. It's the same reason why we still use outdated software formats and weird file conventions and inefficient processes, because they work well enough, and well enough beats, theoretically better, when switching is painful. These patterns aren't bugs in the system. They're features of how humans and markets actually work. We optimize for familiarity and compatibility over pure performance. So what's really going on here? Why does QWERTY still dominate more than 150 years after it was invented? It's not because we're stuck in the past or resistant to innovation. It's because standards create network effects. The value of a standard increases as more people use it. And once enough people use something, it becomes nearly impossible to displace. Think about it this way. QWERTY's value isn't just in the layout itself. It's in the fact that every keyboard has it. Every typing teacher teaches it. Every typist knows it. You can sit down at any computer anywhere and type immediately. If you learn Dvorak, you get theoretical efficiency gains. But you lose universal compatibility. You have to change settings everywhere. You have to carry that knowledge with you. It's a trade-off. And most people make the same calculation Rachel made. The universal standard that works everywhere is more valuable than the optimized system that only works when you configure it yourself. This isn't about typewriters anymore. It's about understanding that the systems we use today were designed for yesterday's problems. And they stick around not because they're optimal, but because they're entrenched. The people who succeed in life don't waste energy fighting entrenched systems. They understand why those systems exist. They make strategic decisions about which battles are worth fighting. Sometimes that means learning the standard way even if there's a better way, because compatibility has value, because everyone else is using the standard, because the switching cost is real. And sometimes that means being like Marcus, Getting in early before the entrenchment happens. Building skills on better systems when the cost of learning is still low. You can't unknow QWERTY now. Your fingers already know where the keys are. And that's actually fine. Because the lesson isn't really about keyboards at all. The lesson is about recognizing when you're using a system that was designed for a problem that doesn't exist anymore. And understanding that it persists not because it's optimal, but because changing it is expensive. So here's what we've uncovered. QWERTY was designed to slow down typists to prevent mechanical jams. That problem disappeared almost a century ago. But the layout remains because millions of people learned it, which made it the standard, which made switching too expensive, which kept it as the standard. That same pattern appears everywhere, in technology, in business, in social systems. The first solution that works becomes the permanent solution, even when better options emerge later. Not because people are irrational, because switching costs are real and universal compatibility has massive value. Think about everything we just explored. The mechanical arms jamming in the 1,870 seconds. The deliberate inefficiency built into the design. Remington mass-producing QWERTY and creating the installed base. Dvorak's scientifically superior design failing to gain adoption. Computers keeping QWERTY even though the original problem vanished completely. The question isn't whether Dvorak is better than QWERTY. It probably is. The question is whether you'll recognize the efficiency paradox and the switching cost trap when they show up in other parts of your life. Because now you know that optimal doesn't mean adopted. First means locked in. And well enough beats theoretically better when everyone already knows the old way. You can't unknow this pattern. So next time you're frustrated that some system or process seems inefficient or backwards, ask yourself, was this designed for a problem that doesn't exist anymore? And is the switching cost the real reason nobody's changing it? Because once you see how QWERTY won, you start seeing that same pattern everywhere. And understanding the pattern means you can navigate it strategically instead of just being confused by it. Your keyboard tells a story about every stubborn system that refuses to die. And now you know exactly why those letters are where they are.